Behind the declaration came to light during a summit in Makhanda earlier this year. The summit, attended by journalists, academics and scholars, deliberated on the challenges facing the journalism industry. Those deliberations culminated to what is now known as Makhanda Declaration. The aim is to provide guidelines to the role players and improve journalism.
Journalism over the many years has played a very critical role. Without journalism, who are we as a nation? We have a young democracy, and how do we make sure that we sustain this democracy? And it is through the work that is done by journalists. I mean, we can sit here and cite so many examples, but if you were to just take the Zondo Commission as a practical example where journalists were credited for, bringing forth some of the information which, had it not been for them, this nation would never have known about it.
The declaration condemns the deaths and attacks on journalists globally that have been witnessed in the last 2 years. It calls for collaboration between the public and private sector to ensure the safety of journalists. Mental health is another challenge the industry is dealing with due to the work journalists are exposed to.
It's important is to have good policies in place as any employer, policies that can ensure the safety of your people, policies you can fall back on when there's harassment, for instance, where it's easy to justify the work you did through your policies, that you don't have to go explain yourself. And then on top of that, employers must be willing to push through for their employees, for your reporters, for your camera people if they are being harassed or being accused of something.
We look in the context of the Eastern Cape specifically, we have so many issues that people are dealing with, in terms of education, access to healthcare, just infrastructure. And very often those people feel despondent about the lack or the slow pace of service delivery. And our role is just to make sure that we keep emphasizing the issues so that somewhere someone in power will look at it and say, okay, this is something that we need to look at because this is something that people on the ground are struggling with.
There's also been a call for innovation and a quest for new funding models in order to ensure that media is sustainable in the digital era.
We've seen with digital era is that so many businesses that used to support media in terms of the advertising and so on, that's been dwindling over the years. Perhaps it's a lot to do with businesses that are also struggling, and cutting back on marketing budget is normally the first place that they go. So it's important, well, I suppose it's been incumbent really on media houses to try and find sustainable ways in which to keep their businesses going. It's not easy. I mean, we see there's a bloodbath really in our industry, not even just in South Africa. We looked at BBC also announcing job cuts. It's international. And I think it really requires all of us in the industry to come together at places like today and say, okay, look, we're committing to keeping our industry alive.
The document has been hailed as the right step towards revitalization of journalism, which has been facing challenges since the dawn of social media.
If we are going to find a way of doing journalism in the way that it needs to be done now, we have to talk to each other and have that conversation. And then out of that conversation, I think the kind of journalism that would emerge is one that's diverse, that part of it needs to be a strong investigative journalism that is deeply resourced, but it also has to be about community journalism. It has to be about the SABC and public journalism, and it has to be about how all of those journalisms come together in an ecosystem with one shared vision, of which citizen journalists are also a part.
The milestone event marks SA's Media Freedom Day, which is a historical commemoration of Black Wednesday in 1977, which saw the apartheid state banning and closing newspapers such as The World and Sunday World, and the imprisonment of several anti-apartheid journalists under the Internal Security Act. Lerato Fekisi, SABC News, Makhanda.